Has a brand new pack of, fuck it, we're doing the King's Peace. Alright, let's start off with the plot card, Attorney for the King. So this is a summer plot card that inherently gets benefits from a lot of support, particularly in Tyrells, which is important considering this also gives knight support, which Tyrells have in abundance. Basically, all your knights just get renown and immune to your opponent's events, which is important because if it was immune to all events, that would not be good because Tyrells are trying to buff their knights. Many things are. So it's good that it's only opponent's events. It doesn't have a lot of gold, but it has high initiative, so you can go first. And if you're just trying to bustle out those knights either for a quick win from this renown or just to wipe out their board, before they get a chance to attack you. That's nice, even though it does have low gold, and it has normal reserve. So what can I say? If you're making a knight deck, this is a good option. I wouldn't say it's a staple, even though it is one of the few plot cards that supports knights directly. It's good. The 3 gold is what turns me off of it, but I could definitely see you using this to push for a win. And then, of course, the titular card, the King's Peace. It's a Baratheon loyal plot card, one of 2. It's an edict, and it's a scheme. The fact that it's an edict means naval superiority can fuck up its 4 gold, and the fact that it's a scheme means some other stuff can support it. It only has 4 gold, 0 initiative, 1 claim, and it only has 5 reserve, which is kind of low. What does it do? Well, it must do something interesting for being a faction plot card. It's kind of like weirdly convoluted. After your opponent initiates basically a non-intrigue challenge against you, they can either kneel their faction card or move 1 power from their faction card to yours. If not, then the challenge is just canceled. They can only kneel their faction card once. So if they want to do both of those challenges, then they're going to have to give you 1 power. Or if they use something else that kneels their faction card, and you maybe know that because it's telegraphed like a location on the board that kneels your faction card to search things, they might actually be giving you 2 power, and if you are Baratheons who like to have more power on your faction card than your opponent, that's pretty good. However, overall, I would just say, why is this effect so complicated? What's the deal with not including intrigue? And if they are willing to give up a power to you to get a power challenge, that means they probably think they're going to win a power challenge, so they'll probably just take it right back. I think this is like kind of a weak card. I'm kind of disappointed in most of the faction exclusive plot cards. I mean, this thing does not have good stats. 4 gold is just high enough to be considered not bad, I would say. Like the last plot card we looked at, 3 gold, that's a little low. 4 is like, alright, you could play something or a couple locations maybe. 5 gold, I would say, is average. But the 0 initiative, it's clearly a defensive card, so it's giving up the reins to your opponent on who goes first. But what a weird, needlessly convoluted, and not even that good of an effect. I guess it is worth noting that early game, if your opponent can't give you a power, then they actually can't do the challenge. If you play this right away and your opponent has no power on their faction card, and then they kneel their faction card, and then the second challenge they can't do unless they won, unless they somehow got a power. If your opponent has no power, this doesn't go off. That is worth noting if you can detect that that's going to be the board state, but I don't think this is worth a spot in your precious 7-card plot deck. Ooh, an agenda, the Lord of the Crossing. So this is the House Frey agenda. However, you really don't need to be running House Frey cards for this to be good, and in fact, it doesn't support House Freys at all, although it does follow their synergy. So the first challenge you initiate each phase, all your characters get -1 strength. That is not just -1 strength the whole challenge. That can be up to like minus several, well, infinity. Well, not infinity, but it can be up to a very large amount of strength. On the upside, the third challenge you initiate, all of them get +2 strength, and if you win, you gain a power. So this is a really strong agenda and very splashable, to be honest. It doesn't require that much deck building around it, but the extra power that you can get every turn just gives you an inherent accelerant towards your win condition that your opponent does not have. If they can't beat you in renown or power challenges or something, they'll just lose the race, as it were, and lose the game. Also, the fact that you get a huge buff in the third challenge and a minor nerf in the first challenge is nice because, I mean, in the end, you're getting more strength total that you would have had during your turn. And since you pick the order of the challenges, because again, this is the ones you initiate, not the ones your opponent does, you can pick which one you might have to forfeit. Who cares? Your opponent doesn't get to apply claim if they're the defending player. Whatever challenge you're least interested in, you pick as your first, and then the fact that it does -1 strength literally does not matter. The only time that matters is if you were planning very ambitiously to win all 3 challenges during your turn, which maybe you're going to have to sacrifice that opportunity sometimes, but who cares, because you're getting an extra power. This is a really strong agenda. It doesn't even require that much deck building around it, so if you're kind of sick of just using like fealty for your starter deck or whatever, or you just can't think of an agenda but you don't want to make a combo deck, you're wondering what to go with your faction card, this is a really good choice, even though it is ostensibly House Frey. A neutral 1-cost attachment that just gives a character +1 strength and makes them a knight. I think this is funny because you can also combine it with the other attachment, White Cloak, to make that knight a Kingsguard, and with this combination of those 2 cards existing, anything can become a Kingsguard, any character, which just lore-wise is hilarious that you can make Hot Pie into a Kingsguard. But in terms of this card itself, it's probably much better than the White Cloaks, because even though it doesn't have its own extra passive ability besides the +1 strength, the Knight trait is just way more supported than the Kingsguard trait. This is kind of a weird card, because if you're running a Knight deck that does a lot of Knight support, that's why you'd want to turn your things into Knights, you're probably running mostly Knights. If you run a few things that aren't Knights, okay, that's fine. They're probably staples, but there probably aren't that many of them, which means, yeah, okay, you could toss this in to turn those things into Knights, but then you don't want to have too many copies of this card because you don't have too many copies of those things, and then this could end up being a brick, so it would be very hard to gauge like how important that was. You might play it safer and just run some like half Knights and then half non-Knights and then 2 or 3 copies of this, and then not as much Knight support in case you don't draw this. It's a cool card, and it really does help out with Knight decks. I just find it very difficult to wrap my head around when I'm using it to deck build. And speaking of Knights, we have a very important card because it is a neutral, non-unique Knight, Hedge Knight. So this is cool. It supports Knights, it's a neutral Knight, and it's non-unique. As I said, you can have 3 of these out, and if you have another Knight out, it gets an extra icon. It's only 2 cost. If you're focusing on having a bunch of Knights, for example, if you're running Jaime Lannister, or if you're running the plot card we were talking about before, this is just the best way to do it. If you toss out like 3 of these guys, all of a sudden for 6 gold, you have 3 Daigons with 3 strength, and they're all Knights, so they can all get that support, they can get that renown, they can do whatever. Having neutral Knights is really important, and other than this guy, Unlikely Champion is the only one. Most Knights end up being unique, and you really might need to splash your deck with these guys and Unlikely Champion if you want to actually have a board that has a lot of Knights on it, not just guaranteed to have a specific Knight out at one time or something, such as if you're just using that plot card that gives them all renown, in which case it's not about the quality of the Knight, it's about the quantity. So great job to these guys for existing, really important for a Knight deck. Very interesting Dornish location, the Bone Way. It's loyal and 2 cost. It doesn't do anything right away, but every time you lose a challenge, you put a token on it, and then during dominance, you can kneel this to toss 6 tokens and gain 3 power. So this is actually pretty good. Technically, it's possible for you to lose 6 challenges in a turn, so it is possible to get 3 power per turn during dominance with this. Now, that's not what's going to happen. You probably won't throw challenges that often, and your opponent sees that this is there, so they're not going to just let you win with this if that's what's going on, even though end game, if that's starting to get close to happening, that might require them to throw some challenges, which would still be good for you. But Dorne has a ton of other support for losing challenges. They really don't mind doing it very much. They have a lot of military and intrigue fodder that can make your opponent kind of regret beating you in a challenge. But then what kind of position are they in where they're like, well, okay, winning challenges isn't good for me, but if I don't win challenges, I literally can't progress and win. So cards like these that disincentivize your opponent from doing that, especially that have the potential to give you so much power to make up for all the challenges that you didn't win, is good. I think it's kind of boring and slow, but a lot of Dorn cards are boring and slow until all of a sudden one turn they are just so much fun. You use this in Duran's game to just win in one turn in some sweeping comeback, and your opponent they admire you, they respect you so much. So this card's good. And a Dornish attachment, a tainted. It's quite simple. Your opponent's character loses an intrigue icon. They have one of these for every icon, and I find them quite fun. They're not terminal. Dorn has a lot of support for removing challenges icons, but the attachments are the ones that are the most permanent. They might be the only ones that are permanent until that character either leaves play or your opponent gets rid of the attachment. But considering how cheap they are, your opponent wasting removal on them is not really going to be worth it. I like to run them all, and there's also a terminal one that every turn you can choose which icon is removed, and they're just a lot of fun, especially because there's a Dornish Maester who, when you lose a challenge, which we all know they love, and you can move an attachment or return it to your hand or something. I forget exactly, but it lets you reuse these and swap them around, and your opponent's like, oh, where are my challenge icons? What am I doing? So removing challenge icons is just amazing. In general, it's so good overall, no matter what faction, but Dorn in particular, because they know they can do it, have a lot of support for it, and these attachments are honestly really fun to run, and let's not forget, it's not unique. So if you run 3 of each of them, it'll fill up your deck, but you can just have them all out, and then your opponent won't have any icons, and then they'll kill things, and you'll get them back, and you'll play them again. It's a ton of fun, so I really like this card. Now a Targaryen attachment called Silver Steed, and I have a couple things I would like to note about this. This is the steed that Khal Drogo gave to Daenerys as her wedding gift, so it appropriately says Dothraki character only or Daenerys Targaryen only. But isn't the whole thing about Daenerys Targaryen they decided was like a fun gimmick is that she's the only card with the Stormborn trait? Do they really need to refer to her by name? Couldn't they just say or Stormborn character only? I mean, like, the dragons do it. Not to mention that Barristan Selmy rides this steed, although I cannot remember if that is in Book 5 or in the preview chapters for Book 6 or not. But if it's in Book 5, I am very disappointed in them for not including the Dothraki character or Stormborn character or Barristan Selmy on this card's text, because they are normally very good at the lore. Oh yeah, and it has an effect too. You get renown on the character if they're participating in a power challenge, and then if you win a power challenge with them and gain that renown, then you can sack this card, bye-bye Silver Steed. Oh, but you get another power challenge. Sure, Targs don't really care as much about extra power challenges as Baratheons do. They could use them because they don't need to focus so much on military challenges because they have a lot of other ways of character removal, and they don't seem to care much about intrigue. I don't know. I don't play many Dothraki cards. It's cool that you can equip this to Daenerys, who pretty much runs in every version of a Targaryen deck. She can do an event-based one, an attachment-based one, a Dothraki-based one, a dragon-based one. She can do whatever. She's in all of them. So it's cool that this can equip to that and Dothraki, but ultimately, I mean, I don't know why they would really want an extra power challenge, and especially if that renown is only for one challenge, and then you sack this, is that worth it? No, but if you keep it for a few turns and they keep renown, they gain a lot of power, and then they have enough power that you're just like, fuck it, I'll push for a game, and then you sacrifice it that turn and do one last power challenge. I could see how it could charge you towards victory, but there are better cards. I love this Crone of Vaes Dothrak. Like, first of all, is Crone not like kind of a mean term? It's not like an official title. It's just a mean way to refer to an old lady. But then she's just waving at you like she is some crazy old dingbat. She's got an intrigue icon which supports her effect. And that effect is, after a character is discarded from an opponent's hand or deck, you can kneel a Dothraki character to place that card in its owner's dead pile. A number of things about this are good. First of all, this is a Dothraki character, so it can kneel itself for that. Also, it's a non-unique Dothraki character, which means you can splash your field with more Dothrakis, which is good for Dothrakis. And it has an intrigue icon, which not all Dothrakis do, because they're kind of stupid horse people who don't really understand. They call boats like wooden horses. Like, I don't think they have much intrigue. I don't even think this Crone does. She looks crazy. That's also helpful because there are tar cards that, like your opponents, have a lot of characters in their dead pile. So this supports that. So I think this is good. I mean, a 2-cost, non-unique Dothraki that just helps you kill things, even if you don't care that much about how many characters are in your opponent's dead pile. If you notice, because it's a choice, it's not a forced reaction, if you notice that when you win an intrigue challenge, you discarded, like, one of their ace cards that's unique, or just any card that's unique, and you want to do it, it's really nice to have that option. So I think she's got a good passive ability, she's got good traits, she's cheap, and she's non-unique. I like her. Boring one cost detachment for the Ironborn, also non-unique. It is called Fishing Net. They are really getting desperate with the attachments here. Opponent's character only, implying that you caught their character in a fishing net and they can't be declared as a defender. I'm not even going to talk about how stupid of a card idea this is. In terms of what it actually does, yeah, it makes sense. Greyjoys like to win unopposed challenges. That typically is done through stealth, but if you want to toss a fishing net on your opponent so they can't defend, go for it. They can still attack, and this costs 1, but it is an item and a weapon, so it's very searchable. I just think that there are so many better options. I mean, Pike is a location, right? So it'll stay out, and it doesn't pick one character your opponent has, but it picks one character you have to give stealth. And getting stealth is always better than permanently picking, when you play this card, which character can't be declared as a defender, because if you give a character that you have stealth, then every turn it gets to pick what can't be declared as a defender. Of course, that's only challenges that it's in. This applies to multiple challenges, but still, I think it's kind of a weird, uglier way than stealth to get your unopposed challenges win. And what a dumb attack. Fishing net, are you kidding me? Big controversy here. Newly made Lord, it's not even clear who is the newly made Lord. I think that it's the guy on the right, because he's an Ironborn guy who seems to be saying, like, get out of here, oldly made Lord. I'm the newly made Lord. But, comment below if you think it's the balding dude. Once you play this 4-cost Monogon, who admittedly does have 4 strength, which is solid, but attached to a pretty lame icon, you can immediately pick an opponent's non-limited location with printed cost 3 or lower, or yours if you'd like, and toss it. That's good because it helps fill up their discard pile for pillage, and that's also good because they have some ability to get locations from your opponent's discard pile and take them. It's also a Lord, so it's searchable. However, you have to marshal it and not put it into play. So it's not great for the tail end of Heir to the Iron Throne, but it's good to play this and then play Heir to the Iron Throne once it's already used its effect, because it only happens once, and then search a new one. It's so annoying that it's even martial, because you couldn't even do some Journey to Old Town shenanigans to find ways to put it into play again. However, it's non-unique. If you really just want to reap your opponent's board down, you can play like 3 of these, and then your opponent's like, okay, dude, you just spent 12 gold to get rid of my, like, 3 0 and 1 cost locations. There's no way that it's going to be worth it in terms of comparing your gold to your opponent's, but it's kind of funny, and you never know how important your opponent's locations are to them. So cool, good card. I like it. I don't usually use it just because it's 4 cost, but I definitely can see the point. I just feel like a 4-cost card has to do something pretty good if it's going to have 1 icon and then an ability that happens once and then doesn't do anything else except fodder for Heir to the Iron Throne and 4 strength and power challenges. But, keep it standing, win dominance, and Ironborn like to do that too. It's fine. 0-cost event, I never bet against my family, and it has very long text, but the meat and bones of it is that you kneel your faction cards to look at the bottom 5 cards of your deck, put 1 unique Lanny into play, and then the other cards go on the bottom of your deck in any order, so if you could play this again, you would know what's there. And then at the end of the phase, if it's still in play, bye-bye that card. There are a lot of these Lanny cards that can put things into play in the middle of the turn, but temporarily. There are also cards in general, I don't know of any Lannister-specific ones, that have you like scry or something, but then put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck. So if you were particularly sassy, you could use a card that let you look at the top 5 cards of your deck or whatever, and then like add 2 to your hand, and then you put the remainder on the bottom of your deck, and that card's text is saying, hey buddy, this is going on the bottom of your deck, alright? You're not going to get to these cards in a while, don't even think about it. And then you play this card and you're like, hey, I never bet against my family, boom, Jaime Lannister. And then if you play, like I said before, multiple, you already know what the bottom cards of your deck are, because this doesn't require you to shuffle your deck. So pretty cool card for a 0 cost. I mean, it might fizzle, which would be kind of annoying, but card advantage isn't as important in this game as in other games. Gold advantage, I think, is more important, and considering it's a 0 cost, why not give it a shot? The only real downside is that it's a kneel your faction card event, so you can't really run it in conjunction with anything else that would require you to kneel your faction card. The most notable thing I could think of would be Shadow Black Lane, considering Lannisters love to win intrigue challenges, and searching events like this is something they would do. So if you notice you're not really kneeling your faction card a lot, splash this in. Otherwise, you're going to have to really think about like the priorities of that. Ah, Sir Gregor Clegane. This is one of two versions of the mountain, and this is the big boy one. He's 7 cost Monogon with 10 strength, and he gets all that sweet, sweet House Clegane support, but he also gets the actual non-ironic Knight support, which I've talked about before, and because he's a lord, he can get a lot of specific attachments, also can be searched out by heir to the Iron Throne. He has Pillage, which is more or less useless until we see what his ability is, and he has Renown. Renown is always good, and he has 10 for military, so it's basically just making your opponent go, oh god, how am I going to win a military challenge against this brute? When he discards a card using Pillage, you can put it in its owner's dead pile if it's a character, which would be a good ability in itself, but would not be good enough to justify putting a stupid Pillage ability on a 7 cost with 1 icon. Then you can also pick a character your opponent controls with the same printed cost and kill it. You won't always be able to get to do that. Pillage is typically pretty bad. The Lannisters are the only ones other than the Greyjoys who can get any use out of it, and I still think that they do it a lot worse. However, this guy's effect is just decent in general. His traits are really solid. You're more likely to hit a character, I would say, than any other specific type of card, so he's better than the ones that only work when you discard events using Pillage, for example, like his Marauders. You'll probably discard characters and then just kill them, which immediately is good, and then you might get to kill something else. You might not, but hey, if you do, big bonus, considering you probably just won a fucking military challenge and dominated their board already with this massive monster. So yeah, pretty good card. This card is Moon Boy, for all I know. He is a fool, which you wouldn't think would be a supported trait, but Tyrell's like to. However, this guy is loyal, Baratheon. Only 2 cost, only 1 icon, same strength as his cost. Alright, solid. Insight. Insight on a 2 cost and on a fool? Why is Moon Boy insightful? Well, then it has like reverse insight also, because if you lose a challenge, you lose a card from your hand. So, you know, gamble with insight. It's good because Baratheons like to win power challenges. They can easily curate their deck such that they have more of an advantage than any other real faction does in winning power challenges. This would be good in that case because you would get the insight from Moon Boy all the time for a very low cost, which would help replenish your hand, and you would not usually have to discard cards from your hand. So in a weird wraparound way, Moon Boy is a way that the Baratheons can use their power challenge winning abilities to replenish their hand. They also have the Red Keep, which is much better at that, and they have other cards to do it, but Moon Boy is 2 cost. The only thing that I would say is bad about him is that he's loyal and that he doesn't have a supported trait within his own faction. He will screw up Hollow Hill. If that's not something you're worried about, he is quite good. And he's not going to be a king to help you run King in the North or buff some of those other Baratheons. He's not a knight. He's certainly not a roller. So he won't be supported for his traits. But, hey, got a good effect. No. Bad effect, good keyword, and cost. Is this some kind of attachment pack or something? Well, anyway, we have Practice Blade for the Night's Watch, which is ambushable for 2 or playable for 1. This is fun. It's a Night's Watch character only, but the attached character gets +1 strength and gets a military icon. That's important because if you are just looking at the majority of Night's Watch cards, other than the like aces and then the random one-offs, they are either rangers, builders, or stewards, and each of those have usually 1 icon corresponding to which one they are. So only the Rangers typically have military power. So bringing this out in the middle of the challenges phase, when your opponent maybe thought they could just win a military challenge quite easily by just declaring with 1 attacker because you have a bunch of stewards or something, is good, and that ambush factor is key. Not to mention it's a weapon, which is very important because most of the stewards and a lot of Night's Watch cards overall can only be equipped with weapons, so that's very helpful. And if you combo it with Sworn to the Watch, then whatever you equip it with can all of a sudden turn into a ranger in the middle of the challenges phase, which is fun because Jeremy Wrecker, for example, would then give that person also a power icon. Or other ranger support. It wouldn't be bypassable by stealth if you were using Benjin or that other Fizz of the First Men that does that. So wacky, janky stuff you can do with this. Non-unique, helps fill out your icons in a faction that is very categorical about them, and very good in certain decks. Donal Noy is a steward, so if you are using him and a steward deck, he supports weapons, and this is a good one to use with him. Although it does have its own ambush already, so it loses out a little bit on the benefit of Donal Noy being able to put things into play during the challenges phase. But you can do it for free. However, that is merely a practice bleed. That is child's play. If you truly want to give your Night's Watch cards military icons, you're going to need to bring out the disgruntled old jerk himself, Sir Alistair Thorne, Knight and a Ranger. So he gets Knight support and Ranger support. He's a 6-cost unique. Bring him down with Great Hall. And while you are the defending player, each Night's Watch character you control gains a military icon. Absolutely amazing. Does the same combo with Sword to the Watch that I mentioned earlier, but also lets you defend the wall if you're using the 4-cost version if you don't have a lot of other Rangers. And Rangers are probably the worst in terms of effects and support of the 3 traits that predominantly make up the Night's Watch faction. So that's awesome. And the best part about him is that if you're willing to kneel your faction card, you can splash him into play as essentially an ambush for 4 gold, which is crazy. 4 gold to whip this guy out in the middle of nowhere when your opponent thought they were about to just take you down a bunch with military challenges, and then all of a sudden all your dumb little stewards and builders who are just hammering away at the wall whip out their swords and defend for you, and your opponent's like, God damn it. Now, that trick will only work once, but his effect of giving them all military icons only as the defending player will still always be active. So again, he's not an aggressive card because he doesn't help you attack your opponent, but while you're defending, that's really important. You might not care that much about winning military challenges if you're a defensive Night's Watch deck that's mostly using the wall for power and stuff, but losing military challenges is always bad. So this guy is super helpful, really good card. Very interesting attachment, Mare in Heat. Here for Tyrells, you can only equip it to a knight. It has the War Horse trait, not to be confused with Warship, and it's actually very interesting because this has no real printed text, but while it's attacking or defending alone, Mare in Heat gains action Kneel Mare in Heat to basically remove a character with higher strength than your equipped dude from the challenge. Weird, because like even if you somehow manage to cancel its printed text, that would still go away even though it's not its printed text, because the only thing giving it this text is its printed text. So just very strange. I know why they had to do this, because they only wanted this ability to trigger when the attached character is participating in a challenge alone. But why didn't they just say that? Like, action. While attached character is attacking or defending alone, Kneel Mare in Heat to choose. I don't know why they did it in this weird way that gives itself its own text when it could just make the text more contextual. But whatever, yeah. Is it a good card? Sure. They like winning challenges alone, so if your opponent is not necessarily held to the same standard and they can block with other things or attack with multiple things, and you're just trying to win with Loris on his own out here, you can put him on this Mare in Heat and remove some of your opponent's cards from the challenge, not to be confused with Maren Tran. For Haber Redwine, that is a terrible first name to have. He's House Redwine, which a lot of things are, but I don't know if they're supported at all. I haven't seen it. He's a knight. We've talked about the support already. He's an awkward 5-cost with boring icons, and he's unique. And for a 5-cost, he only has an ability that activates when he's marshaled, which is annoying, but it is an ability, all right. When you marshal him, search your deck, your entire deck, for a lady character. Doesn't even have to be in faction, although it probably will be, and then add it to your hand. That's super powerful because not only do Tyrells have a bunch of just absurd lady characters like Marge and the Queen, they also support lady characters a lot, and they have a lot of good ones. So just having to search all of your entire deck for any lady unfortunately doesn't put it into play, considering that you're probably going to search for your ace lady, and he's a 5-cost, so that's kind of annoying. But that searchability is crazy. I don't actually think, even though it's that absurd searchability, I don't think it's necessarily worth 5 costs, but like, prove me wrong. What do I know about deck building? Wolf Dreams, zero cost event. You know, as soon as I see that zero cost in an event, I'm like, I'm paying attention. This one makes you kneel your faction card though, so it does have that secret cost, and you just get to search your deck for a direwolf and add it to your hand. Ah, that's really good. Yes, you have to kneel your faction card. You can just play it for free. Then it replaces itself with a direwolf, so you don't even lose any hand advantage or gold. You just get a free search of your whole deck for any direwolf, of which there are many, and of which there are many of varying costs. So you can just tailor it depending on how much gold you're getting that turn, and all you have to do is kneel your faction card. I mean, hot damn. That the worst part about that is just that you couldn't play more than one of these in a turn. That is absurd searchability. There's crazy direwolf cards. You can run a Stark direwolf build, and if you didn't play 3 of these, you'd be an idiot, or you'd be following the restricted list that I haven't checked, and this might be on. But yeah, this seems really good. I don't know if the direwolf deck is good. I haven't messed with it, but that's just insane searchability, card replacement. It's just crazy econ for the cost of kneeling your faction card, which yeah, a lot of things do require, but not much better than this. And we end with the honorable and ever loyal Sir Roderick Castle, who it appears to be thinking about something. He's a knight, so he gets all that knight support, no attachments except weapon. I mean, obviously, he's a knight. Why would you even bother? And while he's attacking in specifically a military challenge, every unique Stark you have gains insight. Why that is, I don't know. He doesn't seem very insightful. But in terms of the game, there are a lot of unique Starks. I mean, they're kind of the main characters of the series, so there's obviously a lot of unique ones and a lot of versions of them, and your deck is going to be filled with them. And since most Starks have military icons, I mean, if you attack with Roddy and you have 3 others going in hot with a military challenge, you might just say, fuck it. I would rather draw just 4 cards right now and replenish my hand. My opponent can take the other challenges. I don't care right now. I'm going to win military, and probably a bunch of things are going to get their renown power, and then I'll just draw a shit ton of cards. So, yeah, he's good. I mean, he costs 6, so he better be, but reduce him to 4 with Great Hall. He's a good card. Just depends how many 6 costs or high costs in general you're trying to run in your Stark deck, because he might not make the cut unless you really need the card advantage. If you are not having any problems drawing cards, then don't run him. I didn't tell you to. I'm not making you do anything. And now for my new special segment, what is my favorite card in this pack? I mean, Wolf Dream seems like the best one, but I don't really care about Starks. Let's see, why did I even get this pack? Oh, I probably needed more Hedge Knights. I'm going to say, you know what? Actually, I'm going to say the Bone Way. I've never really used it, but I think I will in my next Dorn deck. I think it's more fun than I gave it credit for. I love the Bone Way so much that I'm going to end the video right now, and I'm going to go make a deck with 60 copies of it. I'll see you guys there.